There's a restaurant, and there was a man eating in the restaurant earlier this week, and he was sitting with my guest today, at which point my guest informed him that Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, would not be winning the primary vote that night, that Zoran Mondani would. And Tony Carbonetti calls another one right again. Tony, thanks for joining us. This is really an interesting time, and particularly how the vote is going to fall in November is something we're going to have to discuss. But here on the left versus the right today, we just want to be right. We just want to do the right thing and let all of you know what we think is in the future for New York City after the election and how this campaign is going to run up until November. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Well, Governor, always honored to be with you. Thank you for having me. And I like to share my opinion because it's basically worth what you pay for it. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But there are certain times where I just see something happening, and for some reason I feel like no one else is paying attention. And I watched this happen over time because I believe what just happened was Governor Cuomo did not lose a Democratic primary. He lost a progressive primary. The progressives have taken over the primary process in New York, which is why they have the assembly, they have the state senate, they have the city council. They know how to win primaries. So for anyone that says, oh, Cuomo's done, the Democrats shunned him, no. This was a home game for Zoran.
Mondani.
Okay? In my opinion, this was a home game for him. This was getting played on his turf. Governor Cuomo has mass appeal. He appeals to Republicans. He appeals to independents. He appeals to everyday New Yorkers. And I hope and wish he runs because I think he's the best chance to win in November.
And he'll get that chance, certainly because a lot of people were turned off to the results of that primary. It just didn't seem right. It was fair, but it just didn't seem right. And Mondani, here's what I think is going to happen, Tony. He's running in a primary, and that's when you can campaign in poetry. Oh, I'm going to make the East River totally clean. No one's going to have to pay to ride on the subways. We're going to have $60 an hour minimum wage. You can say whatever you want, and people clap. And if you say it enough and people hear it long enough, they actually think you can do it. But this period, the period between, say, July 1st, it's coming up on Tuesday, to
November 4th.
November 4th, that period of 4 months is going to tell the story, and there is plenty of time for Governor Cuomo to take his message to the people who are going to be voting in the general. Now, you have a real understanding of general election votes as opposed to primaries. Give our listeners a little bit of it so that they can see what an opportunity this can be, not only for the former governor, but really anybody who would be running against Mondani at this point.
I'm born and raised in New York City, born in East Harlem, live on the Upper East Side now, spent my entire life here in government, in politics. I know I have a sense of the city. I've been, spent a lot of time in every borough. I still take the subway. I do ride the buses. Don't let my kids take the subway, by the way, or the buses, but that's besides the point. So I understand the city, okay? I'm pretty certain when I say every progressive is a registered Democrat. Every Democrat is not a progressive, okay?
Right.
No registered Republicans are progressive, and virtually no registered independents are progressive. The progressives have coalesced in the Democratic Party, and they have taken over those primaries, which is why you see, if Congressman Crowley had run against AOC in that general election, he would have beaten her.
He would have beaten her.
Okay. Joe Lieberman, who was also a dear friend, great American, former senator from Connecticut, former Democratic nominee for vice president. If he actually said to Crowley afterwards, we need to stop her now. I will work with my friends in the Independent Party and the Republican Party. You should run against her in the general. And Crowley was just so shocked, he didn't do it. So I'm hoping that when Andrew takes a step back and the wound heals and he realizes he didn't lose a fair fight. You know, he walked into an ambush. Okay, that's what these Democratic primaries have become. The progressives get to ambush.
And interestingly enough, because he was in the primary, they were coalescing against him.
Yes.
So it wasn't just vote for me, I'm progressive, and Andrew isn't. No, vote for me, vote for Brad Lander, anybody who, vote for Adrian Adams, anybody who was in this primary coalesced with each other to stop him.
Correct.
Which, by the way, I have to admit, I didn't think they could do that, but they did.
Ranked choice voting I don't even know how it's legal. It's criminal. The little voters get to gang up on the guy in the front, and that's a different story. But what you said before was right. Now, when July 1st comes along, and people now start to take this seriously about doing the job, now you have to worry about, can this person do the job? Okay, I spent 8 years in government working for Mayor Giuliani. I still say the greatest mayor of our time. And when his time came on September 11th, where he had to show leadership, he'll be the first one to tell you. 14 years earlier, was 12 years earlier, when he first ran and lost, he was not the same person he was 12 years later.
Right.
Okay? What you learn from being mayor and just from being around the city. Mayor Giuliani will say in 1989, when he lost, he learned more in that 4-year gap, and he was a better mayor in 1994 when he took office.
Than he would have been in 1990 if
exactly.
he won.
Exactly. He said, I would have had this learning curve. He goes, I spent 4 years in between learning and learning and learning. Okay? Zoran is not prepared for that what-if problem. And you know what? We always have those problems. Eric Adams at least was in government. He was a police officer on the street. I respect his time there, and then when things happen, I respect he has the ability to handle it. And now being mayor for 3 years, I don't see anything from Zoran that tells me he's going to be that leader. I've seen it from Andrew Cuomo, time and time again. So that's my 2 cents on where we are.
Now, that being the case, when we look to the general election, it looks like we're going to have 4 candidates who are...
5, I think.
5.
Remember, the judge keeps mentioning the guy that we don't know, Walden or whatever.
Walden. He's a jerk. He is.
I don't know him.
He's a jerk.
Okay. Is that his party line?
Yeah. But with 4 known candidates, Curtis Lee, we got 28% in 2021.
315 or 16,000
people voted for him. That 28 could look really good if he could get it back.
In a 5-way race, 28 might get you there. 32 definitely get you there, probably.
32 would get you there.
Right, 32 gets you there.
28 in a 4-person race might get you there.
Yeah, it depends how low how low the jerk gets. I don't know. It's
right. Well, he's not even in it. But Eric Adams really might underperform in the general, because one of the things that you have to be in order to get elected is you have to have an identity. Right now, he was the mayor who got indicted. He is the mayor now who gets out of the Democratic primary, which Democratic voters...
Because he knew he wouldn't win.
He knew he wouldn't win, decides to run as an independent, and has almost contradictory positions on different areas that I think the public has lost touch with who he ever was or what he ever could be. So I think he's got a problem in the general.
Oh, I think so. And understand, the opinions I'm giving now are really not based on who I really want to win. It's who can beat Zoran.
Yes.
Okay? So at the end of the day, if Cuomo drops out, I'll tell you right now, I'm voting for Adams.
Yeah.
I will vote for anyone but Zoran.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's got to be the best chance, but I don't believe Adams gives us the best chance to win right now. I believe Cuomo gives us the best chance to win. I think he has crossover appeal. I think there's, people like myself who, Italian-American, registered Republican. I couldn't vote for him in a Democratic primary. I'm not registered, but I would vote for him in November. I think there's a lot of people like me in Staten Island, in the Bronx, in parts of Queens, people that remember his family for many years. So I think he will be able to coalesce that. And I think over the summer he'll show the leadership that the city needs.
And I think what will be comforting for all those voters is what he had said in the primary, but I didn't think he said it in the way that it should have reverberated as it did not. And that is, he's done it before. This is not going to be, it's a new address. But, and by the way, as Attorney General and as Governor, I thought his staffs were as well organized as anything I've ever seen.
Oh, he can do the job. There's no question about that.
I mean, he knows who's supposed, in 2014, I hung my portrait in the hall of the Capitol. Every governor is allowed to come back and put a portrait up. And he held the portrait ceremony for me. Uh-huh. It was exactly what it was supposed to be. And his staff couldn't have been nicer. Everybody knew what they were supposed to do. And
it's a professional operation. He knows how to run a He's been doing it for many years when he was at HUD.
He really does.
Under Clinton, it's 30 years ago now.
Yes.
Okay.
And if he'd gone into business, I think he would have had that same acumen. And so I think this could be calming, which is, I think, what needs to happen here for the voters for voting in the general election. In other words, don't get upset. Andrew's running. You know what you're going to get with Andrew. Mondani had a nice little situation that fate pushed him to victory in the primary, but now he's got to run in a general election where I really feel that he will be forced to go into detail about how he's going to, handle ICE or any of these other issues that he talks about. And again, it's always flowery, like poetry. Mm-hmm. That's great. He should make a movie, but he should not be mayor of the city of New York.
If Andrew stays in, and I hope he does, I think what you'll see him do is one of the I hate going backwards and saying, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. But he kind of ran a gubernatorial campaign in the city. The city is more touchy-feely.
Yes.
You need to be out in the, when you're running statewide, it's such a big place.
Right. When it's running statewide, you really need to make media appearances.
You're doing media, you're doing television, you need to, the in and out.
Exactly.
When you're running citywide, you got to go spend time places. Now, it's not that, he doesn't have that in him, because you've seen him do that in times of crisis.
Yes.
And there was, hurricanes, and so he would actually go out into the communities. He doesn't mind walking the streets and seeing. He's one of those guys. But for this campaign, for some reason, they ran it differently, and I think you'll see that change if he continues.
I think they have sort of conceded. They didn't really see Mondani as a threat. They wanted the campaign between Mondani and them to occur. They just thought...
You never see the progressives until Election Day. That's
right.
Their history.
Right.
They just pop. They're there. That's what they've done here. That's why they beat incumbents.
Oh, yeah.
They take down incumbents that way.
I think back to that AOC race with Crowley. I think that was the beginning of a new era, because once she was able to do that, all kinds of things happened that wouldn't have otherwise.
And remember, I'm a Republican, so I'm giving free advice to the Democrats. Okay? I think it was 4 Democratic county leaders endorsed Cuomo, and he lost all four of those boroughs.
County. He won the Bronx.
Okay,
It's the one county leader he
that
won.
county leader remained neutral. I think that was the one that remained neutral. Okay, but here's
he
my
did?
message to the
I
county
thought-
leaders.
I thought the
I could be
Bronx-
wrong. I could be wrong on
Yeah,
that.
okay.
But here's my message to the county leaders who did not go out and properly get the vote out for him. You're next. If you think Zoran becomes mayor and you get to remain county leader, you're in for a sad, sad ending, because the next thing they do is they come after you and they take over the counties, and then they take over the judgeships. And this is all part of the progressive movement. Okay, if you let them take the mayoralty, they will own the city.
I was talking to a county leader yesterday, Friday, and what I was getting is he had this fear of what was going to happen if he didn't endorse Mondani. And I said, but you don't...
It's going to happen anyway.
It's going to happen anyway. Exactly.
You're going to be replaced by his... You might feel like the good, loyal soldier right now. The minute that guy becomes mayor, you're out.
You're out.
Okay?
And that's another thing. Unfortunately, that happens too often, I would say, in progressive, Democratic politics. People have short memories when they get in office. You endorsed me? I don't remember that. My friend...
He knows you only endorsed him because he won the primary.
Exactly.
You were never with him. You weren't his person.
Exactly.
Okay? They have people to fill those seats. Trust me, this is orchestrated. 430,000 people don't come out of nowhere.
Yeah. And really, sometimes you have to tip your hat to your opponent. It was well orchestrated.
It was well, but again, they've been doing this now for several years. And no one has paid attention because they're doing it in Democratic districts, and the Democrats going to win anyway. So there was never a contested general election.
Right.
Once they win that primary, their person is in. So no one's really paid attention all that much. So, and I'm telling you, this is what you have to be careful of. But I also believe that that's his cap. He just showed you what he has. He's not going down. He's going to go up a little, but not much more.
I want to take that up with you further. I totally agree that there's a cap. There's a place where it runs out. There's a moment when the public actually starts to look at this guy and hear what he's actually saying. Because what he does is he inches out there, and then when they attack him, he steps back and cleans it up a little bit. But we're going to come back and talk about that on the left versus the right. Our guest today is Tony Carbonetti. He is as wise a political mind as we have in the city, but he doesn't really want to say that about himself, so I'll say it for him.
Thank you.
We're going to take a little time out for some commercial breaks and any other thing that the station would like to promote right now, and we'll be back right after that. Welcome back to the left versus the right here on a Saturday afternoon on WABC 77 at 4 o'clock. John Sterling, Tony. John Sterling comes on after us. What could he say that would be more important than what we're talking about?
Are we talking old baseball, John Sterling?
Old baseball, John Sterling.
A lot of great stories from the
Comes
Yankees.
on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon here on WABC, right after the left versus the right. He's the soothing voice and still talks about sports. Of course, he's retired after last year from doing Yankee baseball, but I'm sure he'll have a lot to say at that particular time. And while we work up to that time, that whole issue that you were bringing up in the last segment is vitally important, because if you don't really understand who your adversary is, that's why you can't beat them. And I think the loss of Joe Crowley years ago, I think people thought it was just an aberration, because Crowley had, did a lot of things in Washington. A lot of his family members were down there.
He was running a national campaign.
Right.
He wanted to replace Pelosi at the time, I believe.
At the time, he was thought to be next in line to Pelosi by a lot of people. So people sort of thought it was aberrational. But now it's happened more and more. It's happened in different places. There's a gentleman who I work with who does a lot of work in New Jersey. And there's a couple of races in New Jersey where the progressives are getting involved. And he was saying he thought that Mikey Sherrill, who was the Democratic candidate for governor of New Jersey, would win. But now he's not sure because she's being attacked internally. And this goes back to Zoran. And it goes back to these other situations. And it's really hurting more than the campaigns and who's going to win and the polls and who speaks better. It's hurting the operation of the government because once these people get in, they don't have any governmental experience. And you're going to see some of the mistakes that were made in the mayor of San Francisco. It happened in Chicago. It's happening while we speak in Los Angeles, where these cities are suffering for the ineptness of the people who were elected by the public. And I don't want to blame the public for it as much as that the people are going to have to stand up, particularly in the Democratic Party, and come forward and say, I've had enough of this.
Well, it's not unique. It's unique right now to the Democratic Party, and you have a much better memory than I do. In the early 2000s, the Republicans, we had our own smaller, very hardcore conservative group that was going out and winning primaries, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of them, and it's right at the tip of my tongue. But it ended up costing us 3 Senate seats and a bunch of congressional seats.
Right.
We were going to beat Harry Reid of all people, and then we had the witch in Delaware. We were going to take out Biden, and then the Harry Reid seat we could have won. But the primaries, we elected people that was so extreme they could not win a general election.
Right.
Okay. So when it was happening to the Republicans, it manifested itself pretty quickly where we were able to say, wait a second, we have to figure this out because we're losing our primaries. We're nominating people that can't win general elections. Here, since it's a one-party city, once you win the primary, there is no other side. So you automatically win the general.
Right.
So the progressives have not cost the Democratic Party a seat yet, like the conservative Republicans cost the Republican Party seat. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this will be the first time, I believe, that the progressives are going to bite the Democratic Party in the ass, so to say, because they're going to cost them this seat. Now, it might be another Democrat that wins, but it's not going to be the winner of the Democratic primary.
Right, and the damage is still done.
Well, people now will figure out if we allow the progressives to take over every primary around the country, because it grows. These things start to grow. Look at the purple states. You cannot nominate a progressive in a purple state. You need someone in the middle of the road. Okay? If a progressive candidate won a Pennsylvania Senate primary, that candidate has no chance of winning the general election.
Right.
Or Ohio. Or you see what I'm saying? So, and it might prove itself out here. If a progressive candidate won the New York Democratic primary, a Republican would win the general election.
Yes.
Because moderate Democrats would vote for the Republican.
Absolutely. We're talking with Tony Carbonetti. He was the former chief of staff to Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, and a lot of stories came out of that administration. And we are on the left, and we're also on the right today because we're just trying to be right. And so here's the companion to what you just said. 1980, Ronald Reagan wins, becomes the president. 1984, he wins every state. His opponent didn't even win his own state. Reagan wins every state except for, I think it was Minnesota. And
that was Mondale.
Mondale.
That
right.
was his state. Yes.
That was his state.
The only state he won was his own state.
The only state he won was his own state.
Yes.
Comes back in 1988. Reagan's gone. Democrats figure they've got this. You know, they bring Michael Dukakis, who had to be the most. I can't even think of the word for him. He was just all over the place. He didn't have any real campaign ability on the national level, and he was becoming more left himself as the race went on. And look who wins. George Herbert Walker Bush wins in 1988. So now here we are, the Democratic Party. We've gotten smacked 3 times in a row. And this man who talked for half of the night in 1988, because I was there.
Did you boo him off stage?
I would have. I would have. I was sick of him. And but a guy named Bill Clinton, and he starts working it, and he takes a different approach than the other Democrats. And one of the interviews I saw him conduct, they say 1991 or something like that, he's talking to one of the national correspondents, and they said something about all these things that have happened to people. He says, you know what we have to understand? The pain argument is not working. You don't get things because you have pain. You get things because you're working hard and you're trying to be part of our great country and that kind of thing. He took a completely different approach. And I think at that point, Tony, he caught the progressives off guard.
Yeah.
He caught them so off guard that now he wedged himself into a place where he was the only candidate that the party could run in 1992, and he won.
Well, if you remember, though, in 1992, and Andrew will remember this vividly, because his father was supposed to run. It was supposed to be, remember, Sam Nunn and Mario Cuomo were the 2 big-name Democrats, and they looked up at George Herbert Walker Bush after the war, after the first Gulf War. He had a 91 or 92% approval rating.
He was unbeatable.
And they said, I'm not going to run into this buzzsaw. I'll wait for you. And the sacrificial, that's when Clinton's like, I got nothing to lose. I'll run.
I'll run. Yeah.
So
and that's what let him.
You never know what's going to happen.
That's what let him say what he wanted to say.
Yes,
he was freed by it.
He had nothing to lose.
And he figured he probably would lose, but he would make a good accounting of himself. In 96, he comes back.
Yeah, he had nothing to lose. And you have to always, anyone that tells you they know everything that's going to happen, how much would you have bet the day that the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke, that Newt Gingrich and Al D'Amato would be out of Washington, D.C. before Bill Clinton? You're going to say that's impossible, okay? No one knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
Exactly.
Especially in politics. We can all guess that, and it's fun. It's fun playing, the armchair quarterback here, but no one's fully certain about what's going to happen.
Right. And what I'm advocating for now, and on the lower frequencies, trying to talk to, Democrats who I served with and even some of the younger Democrats who have, come into the Assembly and the Senate and that kind of thing, is what's the plan to try to bring respectability? You have to have respectability before you even win anything. And I think that plan has a lot to do with just being willing to state what's visually obvious to the public, and eventually, I think you'll have a hearing. Eventually, people will listen to you. But right now, I mean, the consternation on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday after the primary, I mean, these people trying to think of what they want to say. Even Bill Clinton put out a statement that said all these nice things about Mondani and then said best wishes or something like that. I thought that was outrageous.
There's no way that a guy like Bill Clinton doesn't look at this, and he knows he can't do the job. He knows Zoran can't do the job.
Yeah.
This is a real job. It's a $118 billion corporation is what New York City is.
Absolutely.
Okay, $118 billion budget. You have 30-something thousand cops. It's over 250,000 city employees.
Right.
Okay, this is a real operation with millions of people relying on your judgment every day. This isn't. You don't learn this on the job. That's not the way this should be.
Right.
So until this guy steps up and starts talking about, stop telling me what you're going to give me. Everything seems to be free in this world. Okay? Really, so the buses are going to be free. So do we not, because you know why? It only costs $700 million. That's this year. Next year it costs $740 million because you give the bus drivers a raise.
Right.
Their pensions kick in. It always goes up. It doesn't go down. And it's not a stagnant $700 million. Okay? They don't realize that until they sit at that first table and have to do a budget and how things escalate quickly.
I mean, well, I had to do a budget 2 weeks after I came into office, and it was painstaking.
It's scary.
And you know what's interesting? In my case, we were very close. Like, we were right there. And then you have these actors who never think anything should work, so they start doing things to try to delay the process. But believe me, I've been there. It's a difficult it's a difficult situation to be in. Now, in terms of just as you were talking about the government's aspect of it, on Friday, yesterday, Kathy Wilde invited Mondani to come to meet with all these business heads. I kind of thought that was inappropriate for the time. It wasn't as bad as Bill Clinton because she is a city leader and she wants to work with the new administration, whoever it is. But I just thought that was premature. What do you think?
Maybe not the worst idea because maybe he'll learn something. I saw a clip where he was talking about, to some guys that own food carts, how the falafel or whatever it was is $10. And these guys were saying, well, if I wasn't paying so much for my permit, I could lower it to $7. Okay? So he was understanding that premise. If these guys had less overhead, they could lower the cost of the sandwich they're selling.
Right.
Right? But he wants to raise the minimum wage. So does he not think the cost of goods will go up when you raise? So if I own, a hot dog stand or I own a McDonald's and all of a sudden I have to pay everyone $30, don't you think the cost of a Big Mac is going to go up?
Absolutely, because you have to pass it along to the customer.
Okay, so how does he not see that? If he, on one hand, he sees the food cart guys and he understands if you lower their cost, they can lower the cost of food. But on the other hand, he says, "Oh, business, I'm going to raise the minimum." Well, then anything those people are selling, no matter if it's a service, everything's going to go up accordingly. How do you not get that?
I don't know if he does get it, but he's smart enough that he should get it.
He should get it. He absolutely should. He's far from stupid. Okay, both his parents, very well educated, very smart, very successful in each of their careers. His mother, I believe, is a movie producer. His father's a professor, very tenured professor at Columbia. But they've been socialist. I mean, let's call it what it is. And I can't remember the name of that very successful socialist country. Well, I can't remember the name of it because it doesn't exist.
Right, exactly.
That's why I can't remember the name of it.
And the thing about it is, he has a little flair about him. He has an eye for the stage.
The camera likes him.
The camera likes him.
That's why I'm on radio. The camera doesn't like me.
Right. Well, we like you, Tony, and we're going to come back and talk to Tony Carbonetti about all of the issues involving the race for mayor and the movement of the different political parties here in New York and even the movement of different political parties nationally. And we'll do it right after we come back from these commercial messages. You're listening to The Left versus the Right here on WABC. Welcome back to The Left versus the Right. I'm David Paterson, and I'm here with Tony Carbonetti. We haven't figured out which one of us is on the right yet. So while we're working on it, we're going to talk a little more about just how you, the public, can take a different view of people running for office and some of the things to look for and some of the things to ignore. Now, one of the things before we went to the commercial about Mondani, he has a flair. He ran into an iceberg or something to talk about the ICE agents. That's funny, and it's it adds a little excitement to a campaign that you have someone who's unpredictable like that. That sort of thing. And Tony, I once took my opponent's literature and threw it at him in a debate. And it almost caused a riot, but I got my point across. And so, that can happen from time to time. But even when that happens, it has to be supported by some substantive, workable, achievable goals that you can describe, you can get to. You can't just mention the goal. You have to mention how you get there. And that's what I thought he, time and time again, would give a 30-second answer to a serious question. But when he runs in the general, and there'll be 3 or 4 people, or how many of them are up there, they will have a chance to hone in on him. And that has hurt many a candidate that thought they could bluff their way to the State House or Gracie Mansion.
Yeah, New York is a funny place. We take to the characters, but at the end of the day, there has to be a genuine work behind it. Like when Giuliani ran for re-election, as a Republican in this city, very, very hard to do. There were a lot of people that said, I hate Republicans, don't want to vote for a Republican. I actually don't like him that much. But I kind of know he wakes up every day saying, what can I do for the city of New York?
Right.
He had that, that enthusiasm about the city came out of him. And people begrudgingly said, I'm going to vote for him because I know he's got our interests at heart.
Now, this is interesting, Tony. I'm a Democrat, but I could see how Giuliani, I remember how he was able to make that message
He loved this
easy
city.
to
He loved
do.
the job.
I remember the day after September 11th, so now it's September 12th, and he's talking to the public as if he was sitting in your living room. He said, listen, just try to get over this. Go to dinner with a friend. Just like he was genteel, actually.
He was always like that. Every incident we had before that, whether it was a weather incident or a blackout, he was always in the streets talking to people. He loved the city. He loved the job, and it came through. And like I said, Andrew's a lifelong New Yorker. Okay, look what happened when Sandy. Like Andrew was out there, in the neighborhoods, walking the streets. He gets it.
Now, this is interesting because he does get it, particularly when he's in office, and he's not going to have to worry who's there at the places where he goes for relief or to a shelter or something like that. But in campaigns, even excluding this campaign, he doesn't seem to have that same capacity. It's almost like it really bores him to actually have to go to things. Now, I know because it bored me, but I still went. And just, having to act like you're so excited to see everybody. And it's a difficult thing. But when you don't do it, it didn't go on.
He's not going to win.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
If it's a what?
If it's an act, he's not
going
to
to win. Right.
Okay? It's got to be genuine. You have to want to do this job. It really is a 24/7 job. You have to really want this job, and you have to really every day wake up saying, how am I going to make the city better? And it's a very rewarding job because you do have the power to change people's lives, to better everyday people's lives. We would do town hall meetings, and people that would stand up and say, I've been calling this government agency for 9 months. I got this person, this person, this person. And Mayor Giuliani would say, come up here right now. you're going to talk to Tony, and you're not going to leave until Tony's fixed your problem. You know, you have that ability, and it's very satisfying when you help people every day like that. And I'm telling you, I think that's what Andrew's going to be. Like you said, he runs a great organization. He will be very good at that.
Yeah, he has that ability,
but he's got to want to do it.
I think he's got to want to do it, and I think he also has got to. You know how in a boxing match sometimes you just feel like the person you're rooting for isn't, winning or something. You got to let it all hang out sometimes.
Right.
In other words, where you go a little bit beyond what people are expecting you to do. And I think if he's able to do it in the next few months, I think if I were a betting person, I bet he'll be the next mayor.
I agree with that. At some point, Zoran is going to get punched in the face. And as the great Mike Tyson once said,
you're okay.
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
And they go crazy.
I don't mean literally punched in the face.
It reminded me of...
You're going to get faced with an issue that the answer isn't, we're going to give everything away for free.
It reminded me of that scene in Rocky when Apollo Creed says to Rocky, just stay cool. Just stay cool. They go in the ring, and the other guy, Clubber Lang, or whatever his name is,
Mr. T,
he starts yelling at Apollo Creed, and Apollo Creed gets in a fight with him. And then finally, when they break up the fight, Sylvester Stallone says to Apollo Creed, he says, I thought you said, be cool. He said, that was cool. Yeah, but that's really, in a lot of ways, you learn the just how the job works by just watching and listening. And if you can do that, and at times you can even think about your own performance, you can transform it and be a whole lot better than you were before.
Well, I saw Zoran's campaign manager on New York One last night. And when asked what the job of mayor entails, the first thing out of his mouth was funding not-for-profits. That's not the job of the mayor. Okay?
You're kidding me, right?
No, go look at it. So basically you're going to take our money and give it to all these NGOs. I go, that's not how government works. That's a very small part of what the mayor does. But if you think that's your priority,
right, that
should tell us right away we're in trouble.
Wow. Excuse me 1 second. How much time do we have in this last segment?
16, about halfway through.
About halfway through.
You're leaving me? Don't leave.
No. I need an oxygen mask because I can't believe that the person who's probably going to be the first deputy mayor, who, as you said, was on TV last night and you saw him, funding not-for-profits.
That's our priority. I don't understand. That shouldn't even be in your top 5. Okay? If that's the first thing you're thinking about, it tells you we're going the route of San Francisco and Chicago and Baltimore and all these cities, in Los Angeles, which you don't want to visit any of these cities right now. They're not pretty. They used to be very pretty cities. They're not.
Tony, I think it's over for me. I can't do this kind of work anymore. I mean, my blood is boiling. Actually, there's yogurt in my blood. It's really shocking to hear someone who's going on television. It's the first chance to make your candidate look good, and you're going to talk about funding not-for-profits. And I'm not against funding not-for-profits. But it's not the first thing you do, unless you think that the unsafe streets are not-for-profits.
Well, maybe they can privatize the police department. Make them all social workers.
Yeah, exactly.
Until they go do this job, he has no concept of what he's talking about. It all works in the little lab with the white walls and the scientists, right, and everything is pristine. Maybe all these things work. In the real world, those ideas don't work.
Until something happens, and then all of a sudden, everyone's pointing the finger at you, and you were unprepared for it.
Yeah.
And that's, really one of the, I just remember when I came into office, a little unexpectedly, but I got this idea. I'm going to pass this year's budget on time. When I'd been in 1 or 2 budget meetings, and I accidentally said to the governor, I think that there aren't enough, that there's too much debt. We're going to have to cut some programs. He didn't like that. So I didn't get to come to any more budget meetings. Next budget meeting I held, I decided I'm going to pass the budget on time. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to pass it on time. And I think by doing that, it changed the dynamic that I had with the legislature because, in a sense, I had to ask them for some favors. Now I had to pay them back. But I'd gotten over that first hill. What was going to happen when the second hill came up, I had no idea.
Right.
But I just had to get over this problem is in my way. It's March 18th, and I have till March 31st to do it. And somehow we did. But it's how you have to think when you're in charge. It's how you have to think when you're a leader. Sometimes you have to sacrifice things that really hurt, but you have to do it because it's not about you. It's about 9 million people that live in the city or 19 million people that live in the state.
Well, we had, when I was in government, we had Peter Vallone. And as you know, another great New Yorker who cared about the city. And Giuliani would be the first one to tell you, without Peter Vallone on the other side of the aisle, we couldn't get any of this stuff done.
Yes.
They did not agree all the time. And like you just said, you know what? Sometimes I have to give things away to get something. They both would, but when they both agreed on something, it was the best for New York.
My guy was Joe Bruno.
Yeah. Guy.
He and I developed a friendship that I just, and we would still have fights. I remember one time I said something to him, and my chief of staff thought it was inappropriate, like I yelled at him in a meeting or something. So he says, why don't you go down to Bruno's office and apologize? So I'm not apologizing. I'm doing my job. He's doing his job. So the chief of staff says, well, what if I go down and apologize for you? So he goes down, he comes back, he says, yeah, I spoke to him. I said, what did he say? He said you were doing your job.
You're allowed to have philosophical differences.
Exactly.
That's fine. You know, not everyone agrees on everything, but you both agree that you want to move the city forward, protect the people, lower taxes, and be efficient. As long as you can agree on those basic things, how you're going to get there, you can always debate.
So, Tony, my favorite story was a budget issue where the Republicans kept telling me that I misestimated the revenues. And they're just saying that because they know good and well that after, 2008 and all the economic problems, we're way in debt. And I'm misestimating the revenues. We're going back and forth, back and forth. And finally I said to them, you know what? That's it. I want to talk to some Republicans. I don't know who you people are. I want to talk to those Republicans I see on Fox News. Get out of here and send them in here, and we'll pass the budget.
Send me guys that don't want to spend any money.
Exactly. Well, that's always one of the misnomers or misrepresentations of who elected officials are. In the end, they'll do anything, regardless of political affiliation, to try to make sure their district is okay.
Yeah, everyone's fighting for their own district. Of course, that's the way it works. And, in government, you're also talking about very large sums of money, which is pretty funny. You have a bunch of guys sitting in a room throwing around millions and billions like it's nothing. It's real money.
I remember we were negotiating once, and we all agreed on something. And so my assistant tells me we're still short. So I said, look, guys, we're at the finish line with $300 million away from a budget. $300 million sounds like a lot of money, but we can find a way to make it less.
Right.
And then I sat back and I'm thinking, when in my life did I ever think I'd be telling people
it's a rounding error
that we need to round $300 million down?
Right. Some budget guy goes, oh, don't worry, Governor, I got you covered. And they figured it out somehow.
So this is the left versus the right. I'm David Paterson with Tony Carbonetti. It has been our pleasure to talk to all of you this afternoon. This is the phone call to tell us both that we're fired.
Exactly.
And but before we go, and even if we get fired, I have a gift for Mr. Carbonetti.
A gift?
And it is a book I wrote.
Oh, look at this.
And it may not be the best book, but it's got the best title. Black blind, and in charge.
Oh, geez, I love it. Governor, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being my guest here. We love
Always an honor.
when you come and do the show with me. Please come back soon. For the rest of you, thanks for joining us. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.